Let's just dive right into this explainer where we're going to take a zoom in approach to really understand net worth. We'll start all the way up at the massive national scale and zoom all the way down to what's inside your personal wallet. Wealth is a topic we literally all think about, but it's pretty rarely broken down in a way that actually makes sense for our everyday lives. Today, we're definitely going to change that. Listen to this. $182.9 trillion. According to data from the Federal Reserve, that represents the total U.S. household and nonprofit net worth as of the first quarter of 2026. Just sit with that number for a second. Trillions. It's a scale that is almost impossible for our brains to fully rack around in any practical way. But to really figure out what a number like that means for you and me, we've got to break it apart and look way past the top-line totals. But hey, before we get too deep into the weeds, let's just ground ourselves in this simple but absolutely crucial formula. Your net worth is exactly what you own minus what you owe. It's the value of your assets. Think your cash, your house, your retirement accounts, minus your liabilities, like your mortgage, student loans, and credit card debt. It gives us a really accurate snapshot of your financial health at any given moment, though, it's worth pointing out that it doesn't measure your daily cash flow or your future risks. So here is our roadmap for today's explainer. We've got 1. The trillion-dollar picture. 2. Averages versus medians. 3. The demographics of wealth. 4. The anatomy of wealth. And finally, 5. Building your net worth. Let's jump straight into Section 1, the trillion-dollar picture. So while the country collectively holds over $182 trillion, U.S. Census Bureau data reveals a honestly startling reality. For 1 in 10 households, their net worth is exactly zero or even negative. That means the liabilities for 10% of the population completely cancel out or even exceed their assets. Seriously, a single medical emergency or an unexpected job loss can easily push a household into this category. This stark disparity makes those massive national totals incredibly misleading if we try to use them to figure out how the average person is actually doing. Which perfectly sets up Section 2, averages versus medians, and finding the true middle point. This is a massive distinction. When you look at wealth in America, the average is heavily distorted by the ultra-rich. Think of it like this. If a billionaire walks into a room of everyday earners, the average wealth of everyone in that room suddenly skyrockets into the hundreds of millions. But that average tells you absolutely nothing about the actual financial health of the people standing there. That's exactly why the median is a much more accurate, relatable reflection of the everyday American. It represents the literal middle point. Half the people have more and half have less. Using the average for your own financial planning, it can leave you feeling unnecessarily behind and might even push you to take on excessive financial risk to catch up. Just check out this contrast using January 2026 data from Empower's personal dashboard. It's literally eye-opening. Look at the 50s bracket. The average net worth is over $1.3 million. But the median? It's a far more grounded $180,027. That means exactly half of all households in their 50s have less than that $180,000 mark. If you've been measuring your success by the average, you've probably been holding yourself to a completely skewed standard. All right, let's move to Section 3, the demographics of wealth. Who exactly is holding on to this wealth? When we map out the landscape of American wealth, age and education turn out to be massive drivers. Wealth naturally trends upward as householders age from their 30s into their 70s, which makes perfect sense, right? You've got decades of compounding interest and paying down mortgages finally taking effect, but the impact of education, that is truly staggering. Households where the most educated member has a bachelor's degree have a median wealth 5 times greater than those with just a high school diploma. It's this incredible reminder of the compounding value of higher education over a lifetime. You see, a degree often unlocks a higher starting salary, which gives you disposable income to start investing way earlier in life. When you give investments 40 years to grow instead of 20, that head start is exactly how a 5 times wealth gap gets created. Now let's isolate what might be the most shocking demographic divide of them all. Real estate. Homeowners boast a median wealth of $406,000. That completely dwarfs the $9,250 held by the median renter. We're talking about a median wealth nearly 44 times larger. And this massive multiplier isn't just because homes go up in value. A mortgage essentially acts as a forced savings account. Every single month, a portion of that payment builds your equity instead of just vanishing into a landlord's pocket. Interestingly, even if you totally exclude home equity from the math, homeowners still have about 17 times the wealth of renters, which tells us that the discipline it takes to buy and maintain a home correlates heavily with other wealth-building habits, like consistent saving. The data also highlights some really stark marital divides. Married householders under 35 hold a median wealth of $111,200, compared to just $8,040 for their unmarried female counterparts. That means the married household holds almost 14 times the wealth. And the census points out that this gap is way too large to just be explained by having two incomes. It points to deeper financial dynamics. When you combine households, you consolidate your expenses. You've got one rent or mortgage payment, shared utility bills, shared groceries. This massive drop in baseline living costs frees up a ton of capital that can be immediately redirected into savings and investments, which rapidly accelerates a household's net worth trajectory. That brings us to Section 4, the anatomy of wealth. Let's look under the hood.
So there's this big myth out there about what actually makes someone wealthy. Well, almost everyone, like nearly 96% of people, has a checking or savings account, and over 82% own a car. Those aren't the assets doing the heavy lifting for your net worth. Cars are depreciating assets. They lose value the literal second you drive them off the lot. And checking accounts, they rarely even keep pace with inflation. The real heavy lifters are home equity and retirement funds. They're definitely less commonly held, around 60 to 62% ownership, but their median values are exponentially higher because they are assets specifically designed to appreciate and compound over decades.
Get this, nearly 64% of all household wealth in America is locked up in basically just two things: retirement accounts at 32.1% and home equity right behind it at 31.4%. If you want to know where American wealth actually lives, it's not in flashy luxury goods or giant vaults of cash. It is almost entirely concentrated inside the walls of our homes and the portfolios of our 401ks. Understanding this breakdown is really the secret to aligning your own financial goals with the proven methods of accumulating wealth.
Now, while assets like retirement and home equity dominate the national wealth pool, we absolutely have to talk about liabilities too. Things like student loans and medical debt act as severe drags on personal net worth for sure. But they represent a surprisingly small percentage of overall aggregate wealth. For instance, student loans make up about half of all unsecured debt in America, yet they only constitute negative 1.4% of aggregate national wealth. This is such a critical distinction between micro-level financial pain and macro-level data. For the individual household dealing with it, a heavy student loan burden can delay buying a home or saving for retirement by decades. But on a national scale, that unsecured debt gets completely swallowed up by the trillions sitting in property and stock portfolios.
All right, Section 5, building your net worth. Let's talk actionable strategies. Following the typical American life cycle, Empower's research suggests there's this distinct wealth arc that evolves decade by decade. In your 20s and 30s, your absolute numbers might be fairly low, so your focus should just be on establishing automatic saving and investing habits. Time is literally your best friend here. Then, in your 40s, you typically hit your peak earning years. But watch out, because this introduces the biggest danger: lifestyle creep. The goal is to avoid upgrading your life every single time you get a raise and instead save that difference. Your 50s and 60s are your peak accumulation years, or maximizing those catch-up contributions to retirement accounts is absolutely critical. And finally, by your 70s, you enter a natural drawdown phase. You shift your mindset from aggressively building wealth to strategically managing and budgeting what you've got. The proven playbook for moving up those wealth percentiles isn't some massive guarded secret, but it does take consistency over time. It boils down to automating your savings, paying yourself first so you don't even have to make a choice about it every month. It means aggressively killing high-interest consumer debt because the math is just unforgiving. You simply cannot outinvest a 20% credit card interest rate. Every dollar going toward interest is a dollar that isn't compounding for your future. And ultimately, it means watching your spending, avoiding the temptation to buy depreciating stuff just to look wealthy, and truly committing to living below your means so you actually have capital left over to invest. So as we wrap up this explainer, armed with the reality of what true wealth actually looks like in America, I want you to ask yourself, based on the actual medians and not those distorted averages, where do you stand on the curve today? And more importantly, what action are you going to take tomorrow to grow your net worth? Thanks for joining me today, and I hope this zoomed-in approach gives you the clarity you need to really take charge of your financial future.